Salutations, heavy metal fans! It's another terrific week to be a metalhead, and this weekend has certainly proven that with a lot of releases that have come out with minimal fanfare, or a little bit of fanfare, that a lot of folks perhaps have not gotten the opportunity to check out, or simply do not know about. So before we go into this Friday's maelstrom of terrific artists, the peripheries, the despised icons, the revocations, and Black Crown initiates of the world, let's turn back the clock to this past weekend, which just ended, and find 5 recently released albums that you need to check out. And you have adequate time to do so. You'll have about 48 to 72 hours. Unless you're viewing this in the future, then just do it anyway. So let's get started. So our first recommendation is Blood Red Throne's Union of Flesh and Machine. Now, do you know the name? Do you know the number? Blood Red Throne has been known by some, they're not exactly Cannibal Corpse or anything like that whenever it comes to their reputation, but the name Blood Red Throne does mean a lot to some. And this band is more of a traditional death metal approach, and I like the way that this album really tones together its register. The fact that it kind of takes that 1990s, like latter 90s, the first part of the 2000s approach, that arena where the technology in production and the technology and overall craftsmanship of the genre was starting to actually catch up with the raw nature of the genre itself. But I like the fact that this still has a little bit of a dark, a dusky, a very depraved, little layer to it that still exists, even though the production does have a little bit more modern, cleanliness and charm to it. It's instead one that still sort of reaches back and reviles you in some ways. Perhaps it has something to do with these dark and sinister vocals that you get, that really turn back the clock to whenever folks really were aiming to just guttural their way into the hearts and minds of millions, and usually whenever they were aiming to do that, they wanted to eat them as opposed to, win them over like a puppy dog. This is a great album. This is one that's 11 tracks, and even whenever the riffs can get a little bit simple or the composition feels a little bit basic, it doesn't have that derivative feel. It instead feels like it's going to take, this little area is going to take it to another part of the song that really kind of, I guess, excuses that, either that or it recognizes that it was necessary for that transition. It was something that was needed in order to keep everything going. I really like the first 2 tracks on this album, Revocation of Humankind and Prolecyte Virus. I also dig the title track a lot, and I also highly recommend Martyrized. This is a really cool track as well. Check this one out if you like death metal, but, we have 4 more to talk about, so on with the show. Examination number 2, we have Coldworld with Autumn. Wow. Okay, this is a black metal band that has ambience to it. There's a little bit of post-metal that's within it. They're really crafting a lot of atmosphere into their sound. And the only way that I can describe this band personally is it's very similar to 10 years ago whenever I first heard Forgotten Tomb, which Forgotten Tomb is probably one of my more favorite bands. So listening to Autumn was similar to me listening to Negative Megalomania and their back catalog during that initial first couple of days of knowing who Forgotten Tomb was and just being so excited and loving everything that they did. Autumn is an album that it has that power to it. It sort of has that resonance to it. Whenever you listen to Scars and you first hear those those hallowed shrieks, those tortured vocals, they just resonate with you a little bit. Even if you've listened to this style of music for quite a while, there's something about this that does have a genuine feeling and a genuine flow. And then whenever you hear some haunting and surreal, cleans, emit, it almost feels like it came out of nowhere. But Void goes one step further and even adds in a little bit of a female vocal. And really just as you continue through this disc, you are just kind of blown away a little bit at the art of this. Woods of Emptiness, which is the 3rd track going into Autumn Shades, feels like they should be united as one 16-minute mammoth monster of just sadness and melancholy. And whenever you get into the latter portion of this album with songs such as Nightfall, which has a nice little haunting start that really just sort of rip-roars and then really transforms itself, into Escape 2, which is an instrumental that closes this and obviously serves as a sequel of sorts. you are left with an album that honestly, you want to hear more from the band. So you want to go back to their previous full length, you want to go back to their EPs and find out more. Coldworld is a group that has that potential, that capability, so check them out. Guess who's back? Back again. Raging Speedhorn has returned after nearly a decade without a studio album with their new one, Lost Rituals. These guys have established a hell of a reputation for themselves. They are a UK-based band. Some people call them sludgecore, which is kind of strange to hear. I basically like to call them sludge metal that has some stoner variety that also is very Motorhead friendly. So some of that crusty, like sort of punky heavy metal that Motorhead was known for, just toss it all together with some just good old-fashioned riffage, and you have Raging Speedhorn in an essential nutshell. However, on this album, there are two tracks in particular that seem to be painted a little bit differently, where they try to go a little bit more low, a little bit more slow, maybe add a little bit more groove, approach this with a craftsmanship that definitely showcases that hiatus that they were on was not spent just doing other things. They also were thinking a little bit about their own identity should they ever return. Considering a song such as 10 of Swords is 6.5 minutes in length and really uses terrific groove and fantastic craftsmanship as far as composition is concerned to create a mammoth track that could actually serve as a bit of a signature for Raging Speedhorn's new age. If there wasn't a track on here that was just called Motorhead, that basically felt like Speedhorn's tribute to the group ever since Lemmy's passing. It's a hell of a good song, as well as other songs such as Halfway to Hell, Going into Evil or Mental, and then the concluding track, Unleash the Serpent, once again goes nearly 6.5 minutes, and sort of treads along the same philosophical ground as 10 of Swords. However, the execution has a little bit more of a darker exterior to it, and one that also haunts a little bit as it crawls to its conclusion. If you've known these guys for a while, you'll be excited that they have returned. If you don't know of Raging Speedhorn, examine these guys. I think that this is one that you'll truly enjoy. I'm going to have to issue apologies again. Ade, it's A-D-E is the name of this group. The brand new album is Carthago Delenda Est, and this is an ancient Roman death metal band. Okay, I know, this sounds weird, but stick with me. These guys are actually terrific. So you know how Nile has a fierce appreciation and love for Egyptian culture. Now this is a group that is very much interested in the philosophies and the culture of the ancient Romans, especially within their experience in Greece. So you hear some of the more, traditional or ancient elements within their music that is then interspersed with death metal, and that death metal just really creates a strong impression. It's very well done. It really showcases the ability for history and music to intertwine together in such a beautiful way in order to really craft something that has either a sinister tone or a tone that has, altogether a different quality. This is a track, or should I say an album, where each track really seems to speak in a different register, but has an extremely destructive tone to it throughout. Almost as though the story that is being told here is one that is of war and nothing else. So if you really enjoyed the Nile album from last year, you'll definitely dig this album. Mainly because one of Nile's own was a session musician for these guys for their last album, for Spartacus. Yeah, George Callias was with this group for a short time during the recording process of that album. Now they have since gotten a brand new drummer, but this disc, Carthago Delenda Est, is one that you need to experience in order to believe, and it's also one that's going to make you a believer that these guys are talented and underrated and deserve a lot more attention. Now, hopefully one of the 3 pronunciations of the name was right. Just tell me which one in the comments, please. I always feel like an idiot whenever I do this stuff. Our final selection is Lifespan of a Moth, which is the brand new album by 16, which, if you know the names I Hate God, if you know Crowbar, if you know Acid Bath, and you've kind of explored that subgenre a little bit of that sludgy, that early sludge work, then you might know this band, you might recognize the name, but if you don't, then you certainly do need to check them out. They do have some pretty fantastic material. This is actually their 7th album. Now, This one's kind of interesting. I like the sludginess that this is able to paint, considering the riffs have that heavy thickness to it, and they sort of trudge along, whether it be on one of the 7-minute tracks that you get off of this album, such as George, either that or Gallows Humor. Either that, or if they are just able to sort of thrust their way through a song uncompromisingly, just sort of thump their way through almost as though they're trying to take a traditional rock and roll or traditional heavy metal gallop approach that you'd hear from Iron Maiden, with the absolute center of a pitch black heart. Did I just say Iron Maiden whenever comparing it to sludge metal? Yeah, I'm going to go that far simply because the gallop here is fuzzed out, it's spaced out, it's rocking, and it does sort of have that similar exterior where you just hear sort of the speed sort of interspersed with the vocals. Now, this is not one that necessarily is going to maintain any sort of pace. It's instead one that's going to radicalize itself here and there and sort of take you on the roller coaster ride. It's definitely one that explores every avenue of its personality, and based off of that, you can get a lot of cool things, such as on Peaches, Cream, and the Placenta, the very second track. It definitely has a little bit of a different, real morphing quality to it than the very first track, Land Looper. And then you get right into a track such as Secrets of the Curmudgeon, and you have something that just makes you laugh before you even listen to it, and then you listen to it, and it just sort of, it just kicks your ass, you know, it just sort of steamrolls right over you. So, I've seen a lot of you talk about Acid Bath, I've seen a lot of you talk about Crowbar, a lot of you are fans of these groups. Definitely check out this group, considering they are one of really that genre and that whole crowd's real peers that perhaps has not gotten the appreciation that they deserve. So check out this brand new album by 16. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, 5 recently released albums that you, the listener, need to scope out. If there's any that you think that I forgot from this past week, let me know in the comments below. And what are you excited about for this week? Let me know as well. I'm coverkillernation. If you fancy helping out the channel, we have a Patreon and a one-time donation link that's in the description box below. Anything that you do is totally appreciated. I love you all, and I'll talk to you guys next time whenever we talk about 5 more recently released albums that you need to check out. Take care.